She told him she loved him, and he believed her. Every night, he gave her thousands of dollars. She lived in Bulgaria. He lived in Florida. They'd never even met. But when the money ran out, so did his sanity, and what happened next would send shockwaves through an entire community. This is the twisted, tragic case of Grant Amato, a man so consumed by an online fantasy that he betrayed the people who loved him most, in the most unthinkable way. You're watching Who Done It, where true crime meets storytelling. If you're into chilling stories with jaw-dropping twists, hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments. What do you think pushed Grant over the edge? Also, let us know what country you're watching from. Okay, now let's get started. Sylvia Venceslavova reapplied her deep red lipstick, adjusted her lacy black bustier, and clicked the green live button on her computer screen. Good evening, sweetie. How was your day? I've been thinking about you. Dirty thoughts, she said to her webcam as her perfectly curled hair trickled over her shoulder. I guarantee my thoughts were dirtier, Grant replied. Oh my God, you look so stunning. Although Grant Amato had never really met Sylvie, who lived in Bulgaria, he considered her his girlfriend. She told him so, and he believed. He loyally logged on to watch the sexy raven-haired beauty do her private webcam show for him every night after work. He absolutely couldn't tell her no. She was all he thought about. By the way, here are some pictures of how Sylvie Venceslavova looked like. Each night, Grant Amato told Sylvie about how much money he was making as a professional gamer, the fancy new BMW he drove, and the nice big house he owned in Florida. She probably didn't believe a word of it. Or maybe she did. After all, he was spending more than $2,000 a night to watch her take off her clothes, tease him with the lingerie he had purchased for her, and use the sex toys he would send her. But Grant's stories were all lies. The truth was, Grant Amato had an amazingly privileged life that he squandered for an online stripper he had never met. Grant Amato and his older brother Cody spent their childhood preparing for the future. Grant, Cody, and their adopted brother Jason lived with their parents in a beautiful home in Charlotte, Florida, just east of Orlando. Grant and Cody weren't just brothers, they were the best of friends. As children, they both loved the Florida Gators football team, enjoyed fitness, and were on the school weightlifting team. After high school, Grant and Cody both attended the University of Central Florida and had similar plans for the rest of their lives. They both planned to go to nursing school to study anesthesiology. They would buy matching BMWs. And when their parents retired to Tennessee, together they would buy the family home. The entire Amato family worked in healthcare. Their father, Chad, worked as a clinical pharmacist for CVS, and their mother, Margaret, worked as a client operations manager for a healthcare company. But Grant and Cody's plans didn't turn out quite as they had hoped. Grant graduated from nursing school in 2011 with a bachelor's degree in nursing, but wasn't quite ready for his master's in anesthesiology. He failed during his first year. While Cody continued on, Grant took a nursing job for Advent Health Orlando. Grant, however, ruined his chances of continuing with any job in the medical profession when he was accused of stealing 8 vials of propofol, a drug used to induce anesthesia. It was the same drug that was a key ingredient in the cocktail of drugs that killed Michael Jackson. In the summer of 2018, co-workers believed he was suicidal and accused him of stealing the drug. His co-workers were correct. On June 21, 2018, Grant Amato was caught with the drug and arrested on charges of grand theft. His brother, Cody, came to his rescue. Cody shelled out $8,000 for an attorney to represent him, and the charges were dropped. But his future job prospects were slim. Here are some pictures of how Grant looked like. Yeah, that forehead is huge. Anyways, back to the story. The generosity of his family saved him at every turn. At 29 years old, Grant moved back in with his parents and spent his time locked in his childhood bedroom playing video games. He believed it would be his new career path. The video game streaming site Twitch had made a few select video gamers tons of money with online gaming. Grant felt that he was good enough to create a new career as a professional gamer. But like many young men who locked themselves in their bedroom, Grant's eye turned toward porn, specifically a website called my.com, where he found an exotic Bulgarian beauty named Sylvie. In Grant Amato's mind, virtual reality became reality. When Sylvie professed her love for him, nothing else mattered, he believed. To watch 1 minute of Sylvie's sexy show required 90 digital tokens. Grant purchased bundles of 5,000 tokens at a time for $600. Each night, he watched and chatted with Sylvie for roughly 4 hours, racking up more than $2,500 in charges per night. Without a job, Grant was spending money he didn't have. When his credit cards were maxed out, Grant needed to find other means to feed his addiction and pay his virtual girlfriend. His brother Cody and his father Chad both loaned him money under the belief that it would be used to promote his new career as a live streaming gamer on Twitch. While they had a sinking suspicion he was lying, they had no idea all the money was going to a Bulgarian cam girl. It didn't take long before the loans from family members ended and Grant Amato was running out of options. Rather than ask for more loans from his father and brother, Grant simply began stealing from them. Within just a few months, he had drained their bank accounts and Sylvie was getting rich. In November 2018, Grant's father and brother realized that Grant had access to their bank accounts and credit cards and had stolen more than $200,000. Rather than press charges, Grant's loving family forgave him once again. Instead of punishing him, they somehow thought an all-expenses-paid trip to Japan with Cody would do him some good. The brothers had always dreamed of taking a trip to Japan together, and the family thought now would be the perfect time. That December, Cody and Grant spent a fun-filled week in Japan. But when they returned to Florida on December 15th, it was soon clear that their plan had not worked. Grant was still obsessed with Sylvie and would do anything necessary to speak to her again. On December 19th, Grant and his father had a particularly heated argument. Chad had had enough of Grant's nonsense. In a fury, Grant told his parents that he felt worthless and really tired of everything. "I'm just going to handle it my own way," before he stormed out of the house. That evening, when Grant hadn't returned home, his parents reported him missing, telling police that he had strong feelings of worthlessness, and they were worried he was having suicidal thoughts again. Grant took refuge at his aunt's house 30 miles away in Apopka, Florida. Donna Amato could tell that Grant was troubled and agreed to let him stay at her home temporarily, but she had no idea the level of turmoil that was brewing at his home. Within days, Donna Amato was at her wit's end. Initially, she thought that her bank account had been hacked. Her credit cards had been maxed out. However, when she called the bank only to find out that the charges had happened from within her own household, she was furious. Her nephew was to blame. Grant Amato was at it again. Chad Amato called his sister and begged her not to press charges against Grant. He told her of the family's problems and their frustration at trying to keep him in line. But they didn't know what to do. It was the first time Donna Amato had ever heard her brother cry when he told her that he had taken a second mortgage on their home and would need to work several more years before he could retire, all just to pay off Grant's credit card debt. On December 22nd, the Amato family picked Grant up from his aunt's home, drove him to South Florida, and checked him into a voluntary rehabilitation clinic. The rehab was scheduled to last 2 months, but Grant didn't last long. He checked himself out after only 2 weeks and, on January 9th, returned to the family home. Chad Amato had heard enough of his son's excuses. If Grant wanted to stay in their home, he would need to agree to their strict terms and conditions. Chad took his son out to dinner and presented him with a contract. The handwritten contract had been drawn up by Cody, Margaret, and Chad, and it laid down the rules of the house. If Grant intended to stay in the family home, he would need to agree to a precise set of rules. Any variance from the rules, and he would be out on his own, permanently cut off from the family. The contract stated that Grant was to get a job, a real job. No more pretending to be a professional gamer. He would have no more access to a cell phone, and he was no longer able to spend his nights on the internet. This meant absolutely no contact with Sylvie. None. And most importantly of all, there would be no more financial help from anyone in the family. Grant, of course, couldn't control himself. Within a week, he had used his mother's cell phone to message Sylvie on Twitter. When his father found out that he had violated their contract, Chad grabbed Grant by the shirt collar and commanded that he pack his bags and find his own place to live. Later that morning, Chad and Cody both left for work while Grant packed his bags. In the late afternoon of January 24th, Grant Amato slowly packed his bags and sulked about the situation he had gotten himself into. As he packed his belongings, rather than pack his gun, He pulled it out of its case and quietly walked into the den, where his mother worked at her computer. He put the gun up to the back of his mother's head and pulled the trigger. Margaret Amato slumped over her desk as her blood pooled around her computer keyboard. Grant Amato then sat for almost an hour in the kitchen and waited for his father to arrive home from work. Although Chad Amato regularly carried a holstered pistol on his hip, he didn't stand a chance when he walked into the house. Grant shot him twice as he entered the kitchen. With both of his parents dead in the house, Grant Amato waited for more than 4 hours for his brother to return home from work around 10 p.m. He had time to think, time to consider his actions. Cody Amato had done everything he possibly could to help the brother who he had loved since the day he was born. Grant repaid that love with a bullet to Cody's head as he walked into the house, still wearing his medical scrubs. Grant Amato picked up the 4 shell casings that had been ejected from his own gun and replaced them with shell casings from Cody's gun. He then placed Cody's gun near his body in an attempt to make it seem as if Cody had shot their parents and then killed himself. Just after midnight, Grant left the house and drove to a Publix grocery store and sat in the parking lot to use their public Wi-Fi. At 2 a.m., he logged onto the internet and used Cody's debit card to purchase tokens to speak to Sylvie. The next morning, just before 9 a.m., a neighbor claimed to have heard what sounded like a gunshot coming from the Amato home. Police had also received a call from Cody's co-workers who were concerned when he hadn't shown up for work that morning. When police arrived for a routine wellness check at 9:17 a.m., they found the 3 bodies. Each one was shot execution style. The blood surrounding each body had already dried, meaning it wasn't possible for them to have been killed anywhere near 9 a.m., as the neighbor suggested. At 10 a.m. on January 26th, Grant had a job interview with Express Scripts and checked into a nearby DoubleTree Hilton hotel in the early afternoon. The following morning, he was arrested in his hotel room. During questioning, Grant didn't ask why he had been arrested or where his family was. When he was shown photos of his dead family members, he cried and claimed he had nothing to do with it. Grant's remaining brother, Jason, was brought into the interrogation room near the end of his questioning. However, Grant still insisted he had nothing to do with the killings. On January 28th, Grant Amato was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. In Grant's car, investigators found a note that appeared to have been written by his brother, Cody. "Grant, I'll take care of all your problems. I just need you back. I can't live without you, brother. I said I'd take care of all your problems at the house, and I have. No one will bother you again regarding this. Just please come home." Although the note appeared to have been written by Cody, Grant later told detectives that he had written it himself. He claimed it was simply a note to himself, repeating what his brother had told him. He had no explanation, however, for why it was written from Cody's perspective. On Grant's computer, investigators found photos of credit cards belonging to Cody, Grant's parents, his Aunt Donna, and several other family members. On July 31st, 2019, Grant Amato was found guilty on all 3 murders and was given a life sentence for each killing. This case offers more than just a disturbing dive into a brutal crime. It's a haunting lesson in unchecked obsession, internet delusion, and the fragile line between fantasy and reality. At its core, the Grant Amato story is about a man who couldn't tell the difference between love and illusion. He poured hundreds of thousands of dollars into a relationship with someone he never met in real life, convinced that her words through a webcam were genuine love. But behind the seductive smiles and scripted affection was a business, not a romance. The hard truth? You can't buy real connection. And when someone becomes addicted to a fantasy, it can blur their grip on reality so badly that it leads to irreversible choices. Another major takeaway from this story is how dangerous enabling behavior can become. Grant's family loved him deeply, so much so that they bailed him out, forgave theft, funded expensive trips, and still welcomed him back after betrayal. But love without boundaries can sometimes be fatal. When someone consistently refuses help, denies responsibility, and takes advantage of the people around them, sometimes tough love isn't just an option, it's necessary. This isn't just about financial boundaries. It's emotional boundaries too, because no one, not even family, can save someone who refuses to save themselves. And maybe the most disturbing layer, the way technology allowed Grant to live in an alternate reality. With the click of a button, He escaped into a world where he was rich, admired, and loved. But none of it was real. In the digital age, it's easy to create a persona. But what happens when we start believing our own lies? This story warns us to stay grounded, to keep our relationships real, to ask ourselves hard questions about the people we trust online and the stories we tell ourselves. Now it's your turn. Do you think Grant ever really loved Sylvie? Or was it just obsession disguised as romance? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your take on this dark descent into fantasy, lies, and tragedy.